I'm joined now by Susie Wolff, Managing Director of F1 Academy. For those that are not familiar, this is sort of the female version of a developmental league for F1 racing. There is a sort of Drive to Survive-like series that has been on Netflix for almost a year now. Encourage you guys all to watch that. Susie, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
There's sort of an opening scene. You're the first person we see in the Netflix special. And there's an opening scene where you basically kind of lay out the stakes. And one of the things that you say is that what you would like F1 Academy to someday produce is a female F1 driver who can compete against the men. And I'm curious to start there. Is that sort of the goal, the end goal of how you conceive F1 Academy? Or would that just kind of be an ancillary benefit, but there's a different end goal?
I think if we do a good job, it's inevitable that there will be a woman that makes it to F1. But right now, I think the wider goal of F1 Academy is to challenge perceptions, because I think motorsport is still seen as quite a male-dominated environment. And we need to create the opportunities, allow the pipeline of talent to come up and help the best rise up on the motorsport ladder. So I think if we do a good job, a woman will get to Formula One, but I think our mission is much wider.
Is part of the mission to develop a league that is purely female-based, that is more on par with F1? Because I think one of the things that the sport of racing is dealing with right now, which is that you have made F1 Academy into kind of a destination unto itself, but the whole point of F1 Academy is a developmental league. So as these women sort of graduate out, there's then not a place for them to go. That's kind of a logical next step up in prestige, in fame, in purse money. Is that part of the plan here, to develop a next step for women only?
I don't think so, because one of the challenges in our sport is the fact that it isn't segregated. So actually men compete with women, and we are the only female race series in the world. Why do we segregate? Because we fund it all. We don't ask any of our drivers to pay more than 80% of their budget, and we fund it all ourselves as F1 Academy, because there's such a high financial barrier to entry in racing that we want to remove that for our drivers, that they have the chance to show what they're capable of. So I don't see us continuing to segregate further up the ladder. We had our champion last year, Dorian Pain. Just on Friday last week, she drove the Mercedes Formula One car very successfully, very fast. So another testament to show that when we find those female talents in the sport, they are capable when they're given the opportunity of making it to Formula One eventually.
Is it something in the nature of the sport itself that makes this kind of a distinguishing factor? Because if you think about other sports, I mean, we're really seeing a boom right now in women's sports. So there is a separate women's soccer league and a separate women's volleyball league and a separate women's basketball league. And there's always been a separate women's tennis league. So why not have a separate women's racing league?
It's a good point, and let's see how F1 Academy evolves, because if we think there is a market and an audience for an all-female race that's something similar to Formula One, then I don't think there's any reason why we can't. For sure, right now, we need to build talent up. There would not be 20 young women in the world that would be capable of driving an F1 type car. So we need to nurture the talent. We need to inspire the next generation to start a career in motorsport, whether that's on track or off track. And that comes back to just challenging the fact that people still presume it's a male-dominated environment, because we've really seen such a shift in the sport in the last 10 years. 42% of the global fan base is female, the fastest growing fan demographic, the young female. So we're in a really privileged position that we've got that female fan base, and never say never. In the future, it might evolve into something which is a female-only series, because you're quite right. Women's sport is absolutely having its moment.
We just saw Dorian race an F1 car. That is something that you also did 12 years ago with Williams. How close are we to having our first female F1 racer as a full-time member of a team?
It was a big moment for us, for a female driver to get in what is a championship winning car right now. and more importantly, do a really good job. You know, the team were very positive on the feedback of her performance. I think it's just another testament to say that we're on the right track. Given the opportunity, these young women are capable, and that's a really good sign that we can keep going and that the future does look promising.
F1 Academy is running for again, those not familiar, the business model to me is a little interesting because the cars are all the same, but they're affiliated with F1 teams. Can you describe to me the process of how you were able to convince the various different car companies, the manufacturers, to put their names on these different cars and drivers when the cars themselves are not actually manufactured by those car companies? That seems like that may have been a difficult discussion, no?
You are absolutely right. It was a very difficult discussion, and I'm very proud to say that it's the first time in the history of the sport that all 11 teams have given their name and their car liveries to something outside of the cars they actually build. And it's a real testament to them also wanting to support young female talent, wanting to see F1 Academy become a success. So I think it's a real credit to not just F1, but all the F1 teams that they really got behind F1 Academy. They see the value in F1 Academy, and that's why they've given us the
Well,
honor.
I'm curious, how were you able to convince them? Because there does strike me as somewhat obvious downside risk there, where if Ferrari puts its name to the car that's performing last, that potentially there's some bad brand association. What was the pitch you had to make to them to get over that hurdle?
Well, the good thing is, as much as it's all the cars are the same, and that then means that they all have the challenge of fighting for the victory, it also is a huge advantage that the cars are all the same, which means the budgets are limited. It all comes down to driver performance. And we are an academy. It's about nurturing talent. We are not the pinnacle of the sport. Our drivers are not at the top of their game yet. They're much earlier on their journey. So I think they really bought into the idea that this was about nurturing talent. This was about giving young women an opportunity and inspiring the next generation. Because I think when a young girl or a father or mother comes to a race and sees a young 18-year-old girl zipping up a Ferrari race suit, jumping into what looks like a mini Ferrari race car, it's something very powerful, because if you can see it, you can believe it. And we see now the 8 to 10 to 12-year-olds, there's more and more young women turning up and girls at karting tracks because suddenly they realize that it's possible.
Tell me about this new book that you've written. What was the impetus to write something now?
It's my memoir, Driven, which I wrote together with my brother. And I think I completely underestimated the work involved in writing a book, certainly because I'm a perfectionist. So it took me 9 drafts to get it exactly how I wanted. But it very much felt like the moment to tell my story, over 25 years in motorsport, my journey up into Formula One, and then running a team, and now F1 Academy. Also because it's a chance for others to learn from my mistakes, learn what I did right, and somehow felt quite therapeutic to put the story down to paper and have it out there.
Well, you kind of led into it. What do you feel like was the biggest mistake that you made that you've learned from?
Well, I don't have any regrets because I'm in a great place in my life. So I'm rather more thankful and grateful for even the tough days, because it's quite cliche. You learn the more from your failures than you do your successes. But that's the brutality of sport. There's only ever one winner. So you need to get used to not winning all the time, unless, of course, you're someone like Lewis Hamilton. And I think it was kind of looking back and realizing that as much as there were very tough moments, they were such an important part of the journey. And it was also the challenge of maintaining my femininity in quite a male and masculine world. And then as I got older and got more confident, speaking up when something wasn't right. And now what a brilliant possibility to help the next generation and to forge the opportunities for them to have a much better chance at it than I did.
Even Lewis couldn't win forever. Even the great ones eventually start losing. Tell me a little bit about your early life, though, which is, how did you get into racing? As you said, clearly not a very common track for for anyone, but particularly for a young girl to decide this is what I want to do.
Well, I grew up on the west coast of Scotland, and I think I was very lucky in that I had an older brother who was only 15 months older than me. and my parents ran a motorbike shop. So I got a motorbike from a young age. And I was very much of the view, whatever my brother could do, I could do. But looking back, so grateful that my parents never really differentiated between son and daughter. They never made me believe I was doing anything unusual. So it wasn't until much later in my career that I realized I was one of the only women. And I wasn't your stereotypical tomboy. You know, I loved Barbie, I loved Pink, but I had that competitive spirit in me. I loved speed, I loved the adrenaline of the competition. So I think in a way, my upbringing, my wonderful parents, but also my character was quite fitted to the sport.
Well, so you mentioned your career. By the way, for those that don't know, you were a CNBC change maker. Yeah, I'm curious on the career aspect. How did you even figure out that this was a career path? It strikes me that there wasn't much of a career trajectory to look at to say, oh, yeah, that's something that I can make money doing to support myself.
It's such a good point you make. And even when I look back now, and even when I was writing the book, there were no women racing, but I somehow wasn't put off by that. I had pictures of David Coulthard, who was a former Scottish Formula One driver, on my wall. And never once did I think, because I didn't see a woman, that I couldn't do it. So I think it was just that belief that I had. But you're quite right, because at the age of 8, you're not thinking about a career. You're not thinking about what the future holds. You're simply doing what you love in the moment. And I'm grateful that I found my passion so early. But the changing point came for me at the age of 13, because I was taken to watch a Formula 3 race, which is Formula 3, Formula 2, Formula 1, so just down the pyramid from Formula 1. And that's when it really clicked in my head and the jigsaw pieces fell into place, that I realized, okay, my love for racing, you can actually make a career out of it. You can try and get to Formula 1. And that's when really the goal was born in my head, to try and make it to Formula 1.
You're now in a position of somewhat of a F1 leadership role. Of course, your husband, Toto Wolff, runs Mercedes on the F1, that Mercedes team. It's sort of a power couple in F1. And I'm curious if you now have your own ambitions to continue to push the envelope leading F1 forward. In other words, is there sort of a dream job of yours where you could be running the FIA or something like that?
Running the FIA, definitely not. Running Formula 1, definitely not. I can't make it to 24 races. I have a 9-year-old son. But I feel I'm in a great position. You know, I have a fantastic relationship with Stefano Domenicali, the CEO of Formula 1. I get so much support from F1 management, from the F1 teams. And it really feels like a moment where we have the possibilities, F1 Academy, to make a really positive impact in the sport. So right now, you know, I'm someone that stays very focused. For me, it's about F1 Academy and building it up to all the potential it has to be a real success mid to long term. Because I think when something is young and just starts, it's easy to have the excitement and the buzz, but it's maintaining that over the medium to long term. And I'm convinced that we'll see the results if we just keep building momentum year on year.
You know, it strikes me that we've entered this world of motor racing, at least certainly on the F1 side, but maybe beyond that, where there is a path now to seeing a large jump in reach. And the path is get a Netflix special out. And so I'm curious how important you think that is to the future of racing, where this thing that didn't even exist, 7, 8 years ago, now seems like it's an essential part to any racing league that wants to significantly grow its reach. Do you think that that Netflix documentary series has become essential to racing?
Well, I think Drive to Survive was an absolute hit because the timing was perfect. We had a huge title fight between Lewis and Max at the time. The pandemic happened, so people had time to consume content. And Formula One was one of the first sports to get back racing because they were able to create bubbles. So I think it was the perfect combination. Let's be honest, many sports have tried with their own docuseries. None have had the global success of Drive to Survive. So I do think it's something special in Formula One as well. The drama off track, the very exciting and exhilarating racing on track. It was just that perfect formula which seemed to capture people and bring Formula One to a whole new audience. Because before it was just helmets in cars and nobody really knew the drivers. Whereas now people are much more tuned to the drivers, their girlfriends, their wives, the drama off track, the drama on track, the politics. So I think it was just that perfect timing, and it's super entertaining for people to watch.
Is the idea for F1 Academy to have a docuseries that goes many different seasons, like Drive to Survive?
Well, we have announced a new partner with F1 Academy. We were with Disney, and we are working on something which won't be the same as our Netflix F1 The Academy, but very much aims to reach a new audience and to bring people into the story of F1 Academy.
And just sort of one behind the scenes question, F1 Academy has a different producer than Drive to Survive, but there's pretty stark similarity there. And of course, they were both on Netflix and they both promote F1 racing. But I'm just curious, sort of behind the scenes, was there discussions between the two producers of like, hey, look, we're going to kind of ape the beats here, but like, we just want to make sure you guys are okay with it?
No, we were very lucky to work with Reese Witherspoon's production company, Hello Sunshine, and they are the specialists at bringing female stories to life. So it was very intentional for us to work with Hello Sunshine, and I think that was a key part of us putting such a great series together.
But there was no tension on saying, like, look, we're kind of going to borrow your template here.
No, because many sports have borrowed that template and used the same producer. So I think that's like we said before, that's a tried and tested theory. It works, so don't change a winning formula.
As you think about what F1 Academy looks like today, what are some things that you feel should change in the years to come to better the sport?
Well, in terms of F1 Academy, I think we need to keep increasing our fan base, educating people as to what F1 Academy is, changing perceptions that women do belong in a sport, and then over the mid to long term, make sure that we have exciting racing, that we get lots of fans to the racetrack. But we are incredibly lucky that the sport has never been as big as it is now. Races are sold out months in advance. So we feel very fortunate. And I think in year on year, it's about increasing the talent pool and making sure that these talented young women, both on track and off track, get opportunities to show what they're made of.
Susie, thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.